What's going on, wonderful people? You got Sturcules here, and I want to thank you for stopping by the channel. We're going to be looking at some of the Crown Tundra returning Mons today. Crown Tundra has been out for about a week, the DLC, the last DLC that we know of to Pokemon Sword and Shield, and we're seeing these new Mons that we knew were returning, and now we see we've got them here. And I want to just look at how they're going to affect the competitive game. So hopefully we've gotten some new Pokemon fans with the DLC, and hopefully through the DLC we've also got some new people interested in competitive. So I'm going to be going through these Mons and just talking about some things they can do. I know a lot of people in Draft League, especially if you're new to joining it, it's kind of easy to just grab onto the ones that you know what they do already. It's kind of easy to grab onto the ones that you have experience with, that you already liked, and you can kind of throw together some sets for them and call it good. But a big part that's really fun about competitive and Draft League is trying out new Mons and falling in love with them. Maybe one that you never really knew you would have liked until using it. So I kind of just want to highlight some of these Mons. We're obviously not going to be doing all of them because, like, who's going to try to make a Zubat or a Celio good, right? It's just not going to work. They're not fully evolved Pokemon, but there are a few. Most that we're going to be looking at are fully evolved, but there are a few that have a way they can be used that we'll talk about a little bit. So something like a Golbat or Electabuzz or Combuskin. We'll talk about those a little bit just because they do have some competitive viability. I've seen them used before, and things like Lugia, things like Xerneas that are just too good that you really don't ever see in competitive, whether it's on the ladder or whether it is in draft leagues, just because they're too stinking good. We're obviously not going to be talking about those. So if you're interested in something like Ubers and looking at how to play those, you can look on Cerebi, you can see, you can look on Bulbapedia, whatever you want, and you can kind of see their movesets and see how they can be used, but we're going to be focusing on more of the normal play of things. So you can see there's still a lot of Mons. We're going to be talking about all those today. So, and all the new Mons that are going to be added. Now, Slowking Galar is not on this pick, but we are still going to be talking about it. So let's just hop in. First, we've got the randos. So first off, we've got Nidoking and Nidoqueen. Nidoking, my boy. I promise I didn't pick these first because Nidoking's my favorite. It was just the first in the order of things we see. But these are some really good and versatile Pokemon. They get access to multiple hazards, so they can both be Stealth Rock setters. They can both set Toxic Spikes. They both have the great ability Sheer Force, which boosts the power of moves that have a secondary effect and take away that secondary effect from happening. And if you pair that with Life Orb, if a Mon has Sheer Force and clicks a Sheer Force powered up move, it doesn't take Life Orb damage. So these are really good Mons to pair with that. They get moves like Sludge Wave, Earth Power, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Flamethrower that are all boosted by Sheer Force. So those hit extremely hard from the special side. Nidoking's a little more offensive and Nidoqueen is a little more defensive, but they can both be used in multiple roles. Both pretty good Choice Scarf users too. So they're a lot of fun to use. They do have a lot of weaknesses, but they can hit almost everything for huge power. Like, you'll be really surprised how much damage they'll do with using Sheer Force with these. So some really cool Mons. Golbat and Crobat can be used in different ways. Crobat is just so stinking fast, and it gets some really cool support options. It gets Taunt, it gets Tailwind, it gets U-Turn, it gets Super Fang, it gets Roost to heal up its health. So those are a lot of support type moves you can use that make it kind of a Gloomon. But Crobat can also be used really well offensively. It can be a really good Choice Banded user with like Brave Bird and U-Turn. It gets the new move Dual Wing Beat. Things like that, but it can be run specially too. You can give it Nasty Plot, let it run a Poison move, Shadow Ball, Heat Wave, throw Roost on there still to give it some longevity. Really good Mon that can be used in a lot of ways. It can pivot, it can support, it can defog. And Golbat gets a lot of that too. The thing with Golbat is, since it's not evolved, it can hold Eviolite. It can be even bulkier, so a lot of times you are going to see it with things like Defog, Toxic, and Roost. Just to kind of wear a team down. It can pivot around with U-Turn, and so it makes it even bulkier than Crobat, though not as fast and not as good of an attacker, but still has a lot of use. One of the better not fully evolved Pokemon that you can use in something like Draft Leagues, so it's cool. Still has a good speed. And I'm not going to say everything about these Mons. I initially had a bunch of notes, but writing that up just took so long. I'm just going to say what I can off the top of my head, try to give some ideas on what they can do. Psychic and Ice type Jinx, not a whole lot to say about it. It is a good special attacker, has decent speed and special defense. I think like 95s on each with like over 100, maybe like 115 even on special attack. So it has its Ice and Ghost moves that it can, or Ice and Psychic moves that it can run. I do think it does get like Shadow Ball. It gets Nasty Plot to boost its special attack. It does get Dry Skin, so it has an immunity to water type moves, so you could use it in that way. But mostly it's just a decent attacker that you could get for like really low points or a really low tier that you can use it in. It does have its signature move, Lovely Kiss, which is a 75% chance to sleep. So most psychic types are running Hypnosis. That's a more accurate way to be able to sleep things. Electabuzz and Electivire are nice, fast electric types. An electric type that can volt switch around, that can hit pretty hard is always nice, that can outspeed things. Electabuzz, though unevolved, is actually faster than Electivire, but it's not going to take hits or dish hits as well. Electivire is a really good mixed attacker. They do both get good, decent like coverage. Like I think they get the elemental punches, things like Flamethrower, Focus Blast, things like that. So they can hit some pretty decent coverage, and they're pretty fast. Electivire can get Motor Drive, which if it's hit by an electric move, it's not only immune, but then its speed is boosted, which helps out a little bit, since it loses some speed when it evolves. Things like Magmar and Magmortar, they're just kind of pure all-out attackers, right? They're strong fire types. They're not going to take hits super well, but if you can get behind a sub, I think Magmortar at least learns Nasty Plot, can hit with fire moves. I think it gets like Thunderbolt and Focus Blast. I know it gets moves like Earthquake on the physical side, so it's actually a decent mixed attacker. And Magmar, once again, is a little bit faster when unevolved. Once again, not as bulky. Doesn't hit as hard on the special side, but it is a decent mixed attacker that has some pretty good coverage as well. So if you're using one of these, it will be Magmortar, but Magmar is actually not that bad. Coming up next, Combuskin and Blaziken. Now, you are not going to see Combuskin used much, but Blaziken has the hidden ability Speed Boost that it's so good with that it pretty much always gets banned in competitive metas. You're not going to see it much in Draft League, and you're usually going to see it in Ubers on laddering. And there's talk that it might get to stay in OU a little longer than usual this time around, just because there are so many threats, but I don't see it being able to be used in Draft League. I think it would just be too good, but it does still get its regular ability Blaze. Now, that makes it quite a bit lower tier of a Pokemon, but that means you can use it at least. And it does still hit hard from both sides. It's not as fast as you'd think, being a fighting karate chicken, but with a choice Scarf or a choice Band, it's really good. And I think it gets like Bulk Up and Swords Dance and stuff like that. But Fire and Fighting in general just hits a lot of things really well, and it does get like Thunder Punch and Rock moves to be able to hit like flying types and water types that it's weak to. And in the DLC, it now has the moves U-Turn and Close Combat. Close Combat is now its best fighting move. It doesn't have to rely on high jump kick. And U-Turn gives it pivoting options, which makes it an even better choice user. Choice Scarf Blaziken is going to be a monster, and it's a pretty good value pick to be able to do that. Combuskin, the only reason you would draft it, and if you draft it, you'll probably use it once max. Maybe you'll use it twice, I don't know. But you can usually use Combuskin with Speed Boost because it's far from a broken Mon. Has a really low speed as it is, actually, so you pretty much have to run Protect on it to be able to get that speed boost, but it's still a decent attacker, so you could use it. You could use it and maybe surprise someone one game with it, but it's something you'd grab for a really low amount of points and probably barely ever use, but it's still kind of interesting thought to potentially use it. Swampert's really good. Swampert has always been a really balanced Mon, really balanced stats. Water and Ground's a great type because it's only weak to grass type moves or freeze dry. So that's really awesome, makes it a really good defensive Mon. Sets Stealth Rocks nicely, has balanced stats enough that it can kind of take physical or special hits, and it can also dish out physical or special hits. It gained the move Bulk Up, which means it can now kind of start to set up without having to be a Mega, because Megas aren't around anymore, sad days. But it can set up, and it could hit you hard with Earthquake and Liquidation and Ice Punch, Superpower, things like that. And now it gets the move Flip Turn, which allows it to pivot. It's basically the Water type U-Turn, not quite as strong, but Water is a better type than Bug, so that's why. but now it's a pivoter, so it can take a hit and pivot out, or it could be a fast pivoter. Now you can choice Scarf Swamper, and that's kind of fun. So I'm really excited to see what this can do, but there's a lot of ways you can use this. You put this mon on your team, it's a glue Pokemon. It can set rocks, it can take hits pretty well, and it can dish hits decently well now too. So that's pretty cool. Sceptile, the smug-looking guy, is pretty similar to what it's always been. It did get a few things. Pure Grass-type mon, blazing fast, decent coverage. Mostly you're going to spam grass moves, and it does get Unburden, which means if its item is used up that its speed doubles, so it can get even faster. That can be cool with like a weakness berry. On the physical side, it's always had Swords Dance, so you could run something like Unburden, eat up your weakness berry, and then use the move Acrobatics, which doubles in power if you don't have an item. So you can do that on top of things like Earthquake and grass moves. That makes it a much stronger mon. And now it also gets Dragon Dance, so it can boost its speed and its attack at the same time, which is a cool thing to be able to do. I think Swords Dance and Unburden is stronger, but I guess Dragon Dance is something that's guaranteed. Like Unburden, you're not always for sure you're going to get that speed boost because the item might not get used up like you think it will. So Dragon Dance, I guess, is situationally better. You just trade off some power, but still good mon. Aggron. A lot of these I won't spend as much time talking about. Aggron is a fan favorite. It looks cool. It hits hard. Has great physical defense. Especially, it's bad. It's slow. Can't use special moves, and its special defense is not good. It does get sturdy, so if it's at full, it can't be OHKO'd. But Rock and Steel is just a bad defensive typing. For a mon that you want to be defensive, that you want to set rocks and stuff, Fighting and Ground are both 4x weaknesses, so it can be hard to use. It's not unusable by any means, and it hits hard, gets good coverage with Ground, Steel, Rock moves. I think it might get Fire moves even, like Fire Punch or something. And it does get Rock Head with Head Smash, which is always fun. So not an amazing mon, but it's definitely usable. Altaria is in a similar place. It's not amazing. I don't think Altaria is like very great at anything, but it's also not like awful at anything. It's just really kind of in the middle on all of its stats. It can use Dragon Dance to set up its attack and speed. It does get decent coverage getting Dragon Flying. It gets Fire moves. It gets Earthquake. So it does get stuff like that. Decent Pseudo Cleric type thing because it does get Wish, does get Heal Bell, and it has the ability Natural Cure, which means when it switches out that it can, if it has a status condition, it's gone. So gets things like Roost, gets things like Defog, so it being a flying type, heavy duty boots really helped it out. With any flying type, going forward if I forget to say that, or bug type, or fire type, heavy duty boots is a great item because you don't take hazard damage now. So a Stealth Rock doing a fourth of your health each time you come in doesn't happen if you have that. So if you want to use something like Altaria as a defogger, Heavy Duty Boots is a life-saving item for it because it can help it stay alive longer. Absol hits hard. It gets kind of cool abilities, Pressure, Super Luck, Justified, but it's never a great mon to take advantage of those. It's not very bulky, and it's really not very fast, even though it looks like it would be. But it does hit hard. It is cool with like Swords Dance and Stab Sucker Punch, and it's got a great, super underrated design. Few okay coverage moves. I know it gets like Play Rough. It's a cool stab knockoff user, but it's just not very good. You could get it low value and get some use out of Stab Sucker Punch for sure. Dark type switching with Justified gets an attack boost, but it's just not great. Walrein. Really good natural stats, pretty decent natural bulk. Bulky water types are really good, but it doesn't have any healing, and it's an ice type, which is not good defensively. So that does hold it back a little. Once again, heavy duty boots helps ice types out, but it doesn't do anything great. It's not awful at anything. It gets decent mixed attacking potential, but mostly like it can toxic things. It can hit with Scald. And it's decently tanky. You don't see it used a whole lot, but it is usable in lower tiers or for some value. Spiritomb is really cool. Once again, this is a good value mon. You'll usually find it tiered pretty low, and it's never going to be just amazing. Like it's not going to be winning games for you very often by any means. But it does only have one weakness in Fairy. It does get multiple types of Same type attack bonus priority moves like Sucker Punch that can hit ahead of time. It can use things like Calm Mind, has like Dark Pulse, Shadow Ball, Psychic. It gets some cool tech support options. It gets Will-O-Wisp like most ghosts do. It gets things like Destiny Bond. I think it might get Taunt. It gets Trick. So it can do some interesting things, and cool design. Ghost types are always nice. You get 3 immunities with Spiritomb. Immune to Psychic because of Dark, and then immune to Fighting and Normal because of Ghost. So I think it's a really good value mon. It's not as bulky as you'd expect, but it takes hits okay, dishes hits out okay, and it's really slow. Audino, textbook cleric Pokemon. It has Regenerator as its ability, so every time it switches it gets a third of its health back. It's a Wish Passer. It gets things like Heal Bell, so it can really cleric the team around. That's pretty much it. You're not going to be using this offensively. With its Mega, you could Calm Mind, and it became normal and fairy, so you could kind of do a little bit more, and I mean, it does get some okay moves. And I guess if you wanted to run like Choice Band and Double Edge or something like that, it would hit decent, kind of, not really. But it's a good value cleric mon. You're not going to use it offensively much, but it's got pretty good natural bulk. So it's worth having on a team to kind of help support. Cryogonal. 2 things you need to hear: Rapid Spin and Recover. So it can recover itself. It's got good special defense so that it can kind of stay around. Ice is not a great defensive type, but it does help resist ice, which a lot of teams have. You'll find when you build a lot, ice is good offensively, so it hits a lot of types well. So having ice resistances is nice, though having an ice team or ice mon on your team isn't always needed. But it does get Rapid Spin, and it's decently fast, so a lot of times it can outspeed something to Rapid Spin. It getting Freeze Dry is huge because that's an ice type move that helps it hit water types super effectively, and its coverage is just not good. It misses Hidden Power bad. But that's about it. There's not a whole lot out of this. You can usually guess it's probably going to be running Freeze Dry, Recover, Rapid Spin, and then you wonder what's the 4th move. A lot of times it'll be something like Toxic. But it's really usable. Once again, a good value mon. Usually doesn't cost you very many points to add it to your team, so that's kind of cool. Carbink, really bulky. It gets not Ice Body, it gets Clear Body, which means its stats can't be dropped, and it gets Sturdy. Great defenses, kind of lower HP than you'd wish you'd had. No attacking power on either side, but since it does get the move Body Press, which calculates damage based off of your defense rather than attack, you can run Body Press with things like Toxic. It's great to run Light Clay with screens on it, and it is a Stealth Rock option. So a lot of Stealth Rock mons being added to the game. So that's the last of the randos. The lists are shorter from here. There are a lot of fossils returning. I'm really excited. I love the fossils. So all of these fossils returning have rock in their typing, and every single one of them gets Stealth Rock, okay? So one, that's really good. Stealth Rock is a great move. Hazards, punishes people switching around and predicting. So it's great to have more hazard mons. So Omanite, or Omastar, is Water and Rock, gets Stealth Rock. I think it's the only fossil that's coming that gets rocks and spikes, so that's 2 hazard stacking capabilities that it can do, which is really cool. It's a good Shell Smash user, so then you can run Shell Smash, doubles its speed, special attack, and then start hitting with things like Scald, Ice Beam, and Earth Power, and you're hitting pretty much everything. I actually don't know if it got the move Meteor Beam, but it's a good mon, good physical defense, not really great, especially defensive, but can be really good just for the fact that it has hazards and just for the fact that it has Shell Smash. Kabutops is an underrated rain sweeper. Water and Rock do hit a lot of different things, and it gets a few more decent coverage options. It gets Stab, Aqua Jet, which is really nice, and it gets Weak Armor, so you can run that, and it can boost its speed even without rain. It gets Rapid Spin, so it can clear hazards, and that's another speed boost option. So then it's also a good Choice Band user or something like that. So good mon, hits hard basically from the physical side. Compare moves like that with Swords Dance. So Aerodactyl is great. Usually pretty good value mon. Usually not super high tiered because it's not crazy bulky. It's pretty frail, but it's fast and it hits decently hard. This generation, the Move Tutor stuff added Dragon Dance to it, so it can up its attack and speed. It can also use something like Hone Claws that ups its attack and accuracy. That pairs really well with like Stone Edge or Rock Slide. Then it does get coverage moves like Aqua Tail and Earthquake and the Fang moves, so I think it gets dual Wing Beat now. Not a whole lot of great physical flying moves out there, so dual Wing Beat's really helpful so that you don't have to run something like Fly. And I don't know if it ever actually got Acrobatics or not. Unfortunately, it's one of its coolest opportunity for an ability is Rockhead, which removes recoil from recoil using moves. So something like Brave Bird or Head Smash, which are rock and flying types, which is its type, would get no recoil, but it doesn't get either of those moves. It only gets Double Edge, so that's a bummer. It doesn't get U-Turn, but it is a fast taunter, and it can defog, and it can set Stealth Rocks, so its speed is really useful. Kraydilly, Grass and Rock, cool type combo. Neither are great defensively, but they kind of balance each other a little. It gets Storm Drain, so it's immune to water type moves. Gets Leech Seed and Recover, so it can recover itself. It's pretty balanced on both sides. Like, it's not a great attacker, but it can set up with Curse and Swords Dance. Does get things like Giga Drain. Gets decent coverage physically and specially, and it is a more defensive mon, which I think it has equal defenses too, so not very fast, but it is what it is, and it sets rocks. Armaldo sets rocks, Rapid Spinner. I think that's the two best things it does. It does hit hard physically with Swords Dance, does get good coverage, gets water moves to go with its Rock Bug moves, it gets ground moves to be able to hit steel types. It does get the ability Swift Swim, so in rain its speed is doubled like Kabutops. But Rock Bug, it's actually weak to water, so if you don't knock it out, you might be taking a powerful water rain boosted move back. So, and it's pretty slow, so sometimes even in rain it won't outspeed things, but it can still hit hard. It's still worth having on the team for hazards and hazard removal, and you'll usually get it at a low value. It's usually not ranked very high, and I think it's a good value mon that can plug in on a lot of teams. Relicanth is a mon you don't see much used in competitive. It is really physically bulky, and it hits okay on the physical side. I think it gets Rockhead and Swift Swim, so not great specially, but there's not a whole lot to it. It does get Stealth Rocks. It does get, once again, Water and Rock. It can hit a lot of things. It can get Rockhead, Head Smash, so not a whole lot more to it. It's not even officially counted as a fossil Pokemon, but it basically is. Like, let's just include it. Caracosta, great design. One of the best designs, most underrated designs in all of Pokemon, in my opinion. Caracosta is not great, but once again, that's a potential value mon. If you have just a need for another mon that can set up and sweep on your team and you don't have that many points left, this could actually be something you could use. As it might even, I can't remember if it gets Swift Swim, but it definitely gets Shell Smash, and it's a good Shell Smash sweeper. Once again, it's so slow that after Shell Smash it won't always outspeed things, but it can hit hard from both sides. It's physical or special attacker, good enough physical defense that it can usually take a hit. I believe it gets Sturdy if you choose to run that with Shell Smash so that you don't get knocked out in one hit, and it does get plenty of coverage to pretty much hit everything, and it gets Stab Aqua Jet, so that's pretty cool. Archeops, some of the best stats you'll ever see on a non-legendary Pokemon, and they're semi-wasted. I think it got better this generation, and I think in a lot of leagues you'll be able to snag it for some pretty low points, because it did get the move Dual Wing Beat, which in the past its best flying move was Acrobatics, which meant it couldn't hold an item to hit hard. Means it couldn't use something like Choice Band. Now that it's got Dual Wing Beat, it can be a really, really good Choice Band user with its monstrous attack. It's also a good special attacker, and it's got a really good speed at like 112. Outspeeds most things. Doesn't take hits super well. And the thing that holds it back is its ability to Fetus when its HP gets below half. Basically, its attack and special attack are cut in half. It's such a bad ability. It's not the worst ability, but it's really bad, and that's the only ability it gets, so you're kind of just stuck with it. It doesn't get Roost that I know of to be able to replenish its health back into that range, but up until then, it's going to hit really hard. It does get U-turn, so it can pivot, so it's a great Choice Band user. Could be used Choice Scarfed or Specs, could be a Life Orb user, but you are chipping away at your health. And with rock, rock coverage, flying coverage, it gets stuff like Earthquake and Aqua Tail, so it can hit a lot of things. It doesn't get Dragon Dance, but it's really fast as it is. Just hits really hard, so I think it's a good value pick. With heavy duty boots now, it doesn't take rocks. Damage switching in if you want to run that item. And it does get stealth. I think it gets stealth rock. Maybe not. I think it does. I'm not sure. But it does get defog for sure. It does get tailwind as a tech option for your team. It is a fast taunter. So even if you've gotten into Defeat a Strange and you can't hit hard anymore, it can still be a defogger for your team. It can still be a fast taunter. And I'm pretty sure it can still set tailwind. So next you've got what's probably my favorite fossil. Awesome design. So cool. Such a great shiny. But it's got a lot of competitive viability too. It's just a really great wall breaker if you want to throw a choice band or life orb on it. It hits so hard with rock head, with head smash. Gets moves like outrage, earthquake. I think it gets close combat now. I'm not 100% sure, but it gets other good dragon moves, and it does get dragon dance so that it can also be a sweeper or cleaner. Can up its speed and attack, and then also hit really hard. Has a decent enough physical defense and HP that it can take hits well enough a lot of times to set up. So that's pretty cool. 71 speed, not super fast, but fast enough that a Dragon Dance makes it a big threat. And then it does get stealth rocks like the other fossils tend to do. Aurorus, another really cool Pokemon. Never been a great battler because Ice and Rock is not good. It's ×4 weak to both Steel and Fighting, so it gets hit pretty hard, and it gets hit, by also water and grass and ground. So it's got a ton of weaknesses, but it does have, I think, a really good special defense and hits okay from the special side. So it's not bad. And it does have the abilities Refrigerate, which turns normal moves into ice moves, which is really cool. But its other abilities better. Snow Warning, it brings hail upon entering, and now it also gets Aurora Veil, which means it can basically, if hail is up, it can set up a light screen and reflect all in one turn. So that's really cool for it. It does get a decent amount of coverage moves from the special side. I think it might even get like Thunder Wave, which is pretty cool, just for slowing things down. So decently bulky Mon, great design. It's usually probably going to be pretty low amount of points, but you could make it work on a team for sure. So now we're to the pseudos. There's definitely not very many of these being introduced because a lot of them were already around. You've got Dragonite. This thing's a monster with multi-scale. If you are at full, basically, multi-scale assures that you take half damage from a hit. That makes it easier to set up with Dragon Dance. You can roost and get back up to full because of heavy-duty boots. Now Rocks doesn't break its multi-scale if it's holding heavy-duty boots. Since it's a pseudo-legendary, you can say this about all pseudos, they've got great stats. Like, there is no bad stat usually on a pseudo-legendary. Like, I think Dragonite's worst stat is 80 base speed, which is still pretty decent. So it can be a special attacker too, with Draco Meteor, with Hurricane, with, I think it gets Hydro Pump now. If not, it definitely gets like Surf and Thunderbolt and Ice Beam and stuff like that. It gets fire coverage, it gets steel coverage on the physical side, and it gets extreme speed, which is nice for it to have some priority. So it can hit really hard on both sides. It's got good bulk on both sides. It can fit in cool with like a rain team, so you can just do a whole lot with it. It does have a ×4 weakness to ice, but because of multi-scale, it's usually living a hit unless it's been boosted up. So really great Mon, one of my favorites. Salamence, same type as Dragonite, huge Dragon Dance threat still. It gets, instead of multi-scale, it gets Moxie and Intimidate, which makes this thing possibly even scarier, because with Moxie, each time it gets a knockout, its attack boosts. So if you can get up a Dragon Dance and just start hitting things hard, things can get out of hand fast. Salamence and Dragonite both got dual Wing Beat, which are really nice for being a physical flying move that they can use, so they don't have to rely on fly. It gets its dragon coverage. It can hit decently from both sides. Gets things like Earthquake to hit steel types. So, and then Intimidate lowers attack upon entering. If you want to make it a little more of a defensive set, it can run that too because it's got good pseudo-legendary stats all around. I put Metang and Metagross. You're not going to use Metang much, but technically with an Eviolite, it is pretty bulky. It is another rock setter. If you're looking for a really low tier option rock setter on your team, you could run Matang. It's a steel type. Steel types are great. They're nice to have. So you're not probably going to run it. And if you have it, you probably won't use it much. But it's something that could technically be competitively used for a really low value. It does still get most of the coverage Metagross gets. It still gets agility. And it does still get stab bullet punch, which is really nice. But yeah, I just said a lot about what's really great about Metagross. It gets stealth rocks, has great stats all around, good bulk. It can attack from both sides, though it's better physical. Gets moves like Hone Claws, gets moves like agility to boost its speed. You can run weakness policy on it a lot because it can usually take a super effective hit. Then that boosts both of its attack and special attack by 2 stages. Then it just hits super hard. Things like Earthquake, Meteor Mash, Zen Headbutt hit really hard from it. So really good mon. Yeah. Garchomp. I put Gabite on here too. I really doubt you'll ever use Gabite on your team, but it's possible. If it got Dragon Dance, it might be a different story, but decent speed like in the 80s, decent attack like in the 90s, but mostly just put it on here because it's something that gets stealth rocks. You could probably squeeze it in on a team if you just really weren't too worried about your last spot and maybe wanted a little more flexibility. It does still get dragon and ground coverage, which hits a lot of things, but Garchomp is the real beast here. Plus, it's got above 100 speed, hits really hard on the physical side, can hit hard enough on the special side. You can use it to surprise people. Gets the ability Rough Skin, which is really cool because then on contact, you damage your opponent. So if you run Rough Skin with Rocky Helmet, they could be taking a lot of damage. So Garchomp can be run bulkier. It can be run with Swords Dance to just hit so stinking hard. And it's one of the best choice Scarf users in the game. And it didn't get Dragon Dance, but it did get Scale Shot, which it can run, which boosts its speed and lowers its defense as a Dragon type move. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, Swords Dance, Scale Shot, Earthquake, and some other move could be really scary. And since it's fast and decently bulky, it can be a quick stealth rock setter too, which is really cool. Now we're on to the legendary trios. So you got Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos, and I said those out of order, but that's okay. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, decently naturally bulky birds. They're legendary, so they have good stats. Have things like Roost and Defog. Now that heavy-duty boots are around, that helps them out a lot because Articuno and Moltres both had types that had them taking 50% damage upon entering because of stealth rocks, which is just insane. Zapdos was always the best of the 3. Electric Flying is a pretty cool type, and it was just it felt like its bulk was distributed nicely. With something like Static, it can paralyze on contact. Moltres gets Flame Body, and Articuno gets, I can't remember if it's Ice Veil or Ice Body. Either way, you run pressure on it. But these are decent mons. Articuno is usually a lower tier. Decent stats for a lower tier value pick. Once again, it does have hazard removal. Mostly hits with ice moves, but it does get freeze dry. I think it gets like Shadow Ball, maybe even, so it can hit a little more diversely. But a lot of times you'll see it as like a Toxic Staller with Toxic and Roost. Zapdos is usually a little bit higher value, and then Moltres is usually kind of in the middle. So they have their Galarian forms too, and from what I am seeing, they all lost Roost, which really stinks. Now they can't heal themselves. I think Articuno might still have Recover to heal itself, but a flying type not having Roost is really annoying because that's usually one of the best reasons to run them is their self-recovery. And I think they may have lost Defog too. So I'm interested to see if they'll be as good as their counterparts. Their typings, I think, are better. Like Psychic and Flying is better than Ice Flying. That's what Articuno is. Dark Flying is cool. It doesn't have the weakness that Fire Flying has of Moltres, and then Fighting Flying is really cool. We've only ever seen that on Halucha, and it's really good for Zapdos. Zapdos is fast, so once again, it's probably the best of the 3, and I think it got the best. They all got signature moves that are 90 base power, Psychic, Dark, and Fighting, respectively, with their types. But I think Galarian Zapdos' move always lowers defense on top of hitting, which is just insane. Articuno is a Psychic with a chance to freeze, 90 base power, and Moltres is really annoying. It's called Fiery Wrath, so you'd figure, hey, that's a Dark type move that might be able to burn, right? Nope. it's a dark type move that might be able to flinch, aka a slightly stronger Dark Pulse. So that's a bummer because I think Dark Pulse might even have a better chance to flinch. So I feel like they made amazing designs for these, but competitively kind of did them a little bit dirty. Zapdos is 100 speed with 125 attack. If they would have flopped those, I think it would have been even better with 125 speed. I don't think any of them get any like pivoting or anything, but like they're all decent enough attackers. Moltres has great special defense, so we'll just have to see how good they are. Part of me thinks if you're looking at either one of these trios, Zapdos is just the way to go, but they all have their use. They all have legendary stats. You can make it work. The legendary dogs are all really good. Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. Suicune is very bulky water type. Bulky water types are great. It gets Scald Spam. It gets Calm Mind that can be run with like Ice Beam and a water move. I think it gets Psychic moves. And a lot of times it likes to Calm Mind up and then rest. And then just kind of gain its health back with leftovers. So it's very bulky. Likes to run things like Toxic. I don't think it might get Whirlwind to phase things out. Entei is more of a physical attacker. You see it run with Choice Band a lot. Sacred Fire is a great move. Physical fire move, 100 base power. Has like a 50% chance to burn, which is just great. Gets pretty good coverage like Stomping Tantrum. Gets Extreme Speed, which they all get Extreme Speed, but the other two are special attackers, so they don't really use it. Whereas Entei takes good use of that, basically. And then Raikou is faster. It's a good pivoter with Volt Switch, so they all kind of have their different things they can do. There was a rumor that Raikou was going to get Scald. I need to look and see if that's actually true. But if so, that's huge for it being able to have Scald to hit ground types. But it does get Calm Mind. It does get its electric moves. It gets things like Aura Sphere and Extra Sensory. It liked to use Hidden Power, so it's missing Hidden Power. So if it got Scald, that helps it out a lot. But really fast Mon, really good middle to high middle tier Mons that all have kind of an expected use out of what they're going to do, but all really good at what they're doing. Next, you got the Reggie trio, Regirock, Regice, Registeel. These are all defensive Pokemon. Like, they take hits really well. Unfortunately, Rock and Ice aren't the best typings in the world, so a lot of times Regirock and Regice are in pretty low tiers, but I think something like a Regirock is usually pretty good value for how low of an amount of points or tier you can grab it at. So it has great physical defense with a good physical attack. It can use things like Curse with Stone Edge and Earthquake to just hit pretty much everything. They all love to run Toxic. Regice has a great special defense. And then Registeel is not a good attacker on either side, but has two amazing defenses. Just really thick, and then Pure Steel is just a great defensive typing. So you usually see it running something like Toxic and Seismic Toss just to do any sort of damage to break a substitute. And it likes to rest. It likes to have leftovers. Really annoying to bring down because it's so bulky. So it's the best of the three. But Regice can at least attack from the special side, and Regirock can attack from this physical side. Now, with Registeel, you can run Curse and boost its attack, and potentially do some stuff there too. So that's something interesting. Regirock and Registeel get Stealth Rocks. I don't think Regice does get Stealth Rocks. So that's something that probably makes Regice the worst of the three, on top of, unfortunately, being the worst typing of the three. You got another, this isn't a real trio, but there's three more Reggies, so I wanted to group them together. Regieleki and Regidrago are the new Pokemon, two of the new Pokemon. Regieleki is officially the fastest Mon ever, 200 base speed, good attack on both sides, gets a lot of electric moves. It does not get good coverage. If you are wanting to hit ground types, you are out of luck. You have some normal moves, some like weak moves like Bounce. It gets some sort of dark move that's also weak. It does not have good coverage. But with 200 base speed, you outspeed everything. You even outspeed a lot of choice Scarfers. You can run something like Electro Ball, which is based on how much faster you are than your opponent bases the power, so that would be very high. And it gets the ability Transistor. Did I say that right? Transistor? I think it's Transistor. Either way, it powers up electric type moves, I think probably by 30%. So electric moves are going to hit really hard. And you're going to be faster than everything. Regidrago has a huge HP stat. So all the Regis usually have one really big stat, right? Huge HP stat, decent speed and decent attack stats. So that's kind of cool. It's Dragon Maw, I think is its ability. Powers up dragon moves by 30%. And then its Dragon Energy move is a special dragon move. The more HP you have, the harder it strikes. So it's good that it has such a huge HP stat. I forgot Regieleki has a special move called like Electric Cage, which is basically an electric move that attacks for a few turns. Kind of like a buffed up like Fire Spin, but electric type. Then Regigigas is the strongest of all the Regis, but because its ability is complete garbage, it's always in a very low tier, even though it's got great stats, great physical attack, good speed, great bulk, pure normal type, but slow start. For 5 turns, its attack and speed are cut in half. So it's pretty useless for 5 turns, and each time you switch it out, those turns reset with slow start. That's so dumb. Why do they reset? I don't know. But people always say, well, they didn't want it being too strong, but they don't have a problem with Rayquaza or Xerneas being too strong, so why did they care if Regigigas was too strong? I don't know. But usually, it does get moves like Drain Punch to hit steel types. It does get its moves like Body Slam, its normal type move. It has its signature move, Crush Grip, which I think maybe does more the more HP your opponent has, possibly. Huge thing it does get now, though, is it gets Protect, which sounds like, oh, cool, what a buff. But Protect helps you stall those turns of slow start before it can get its speed and attack up. So a lot of times you'll see it run with like Toxic, Protect, Substitute, and 1 attack. So you can make it work, but it is pretty frustrating. Slow start's like the worst ability ever. They couldn't have even just made it like 2 turns. I don't know. Either way. Now we got the Lake Guardians. Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf. Pure Psychic types. Versatile Mons. They all get Stealth Rocks, I believe. They all get things like Healing Wish, so that's cool. They all get good coverage moves. So like you got your Psychic types, but they also get like Ghost type and Electric type moves. I think they might even get like Flamethrower and Ice Beam, stuff like that. So they get some good physical moves. I think they all get U-Turn. They all get like Zen Headbutt and things like that. So they're really good Mons. In fact, I think they might all get Knockoff too. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I could be wrong. But they're good Mons. Uxie is the one on the left with the yellow head, is way more defensive. Mesprit is the one that's very balanced. It's kind of got good stats everywhere. And then Azelf is more offensive. I think they all get... I know Azelf gets Nasty Plot. I think they probably all get Calm Mind. So, but you can kind of look at them. They are good plug-in Mons to add to a team, to glue a team together. Azelf is usually the highest tiered one, being a great attacker. And then a lot of times I think Uxie is a little higher tiered, just because pure defense is good, and then Mesprit is just kind of in the middle on everything, but I think it's a lot of fun to use and is really good. Don't expect them to be the MVP on your team, but they do glue things together nicely. The Genie Trio I absolutely love. Tornadus, Landorus, and Thundurus. You got a flying type, ground flying, and electric flying. So Tornadus and Thundurus have Prankster as their abilities, and then Landorus' main ability is Sheer Force. Landorus Incarnate with Sheer Force is usually banned because it's just so good. It just hits so hard it's not even fair. So that's usually banned, so you have to run it with Sand Force, which means its attacks hit harder in sand. And then the other two, they get Prankster and Defiant. Those are both allowed. But yeah, they're good versatile Mons, once again. You'll actually usually see them in their other forms that I'm about to show you, but Thundurus likes to set up a Nasty Plot, hit hard with electric moves. It misses Hidden Power a lot, but it does still get good coverage moves. It gets things like Sludge Wave and Psychic and Focus Blast. I don't think it gets I don't know if it gets any flying moves. It definitely doesn't get a special flying move that I know of, unless they got added. I need to check on that, see if it got any good moves, but you usually see like Earth Power or Earthquake on Landorus. They get the U-turns. And then, like I said, you don't see the Genies as much as their next form. But then I think Prankster Thundurus is really cool with like Taunt, with U-turn, with Tailwind, just cool things it can do like that. They do get things like Super Power to hit. It gets Acrobatics as a pure flying type, is pretty nice. The other forms you see used a lot more, Tornadus T, Tornadus Therian has the regenerator ability, so you'll see it used a lot with like knockoff, U-turn, defog, and hurricane. A lot of times is a move set that you'll see it run that can be choice scarf, it can be assault vest, it can do so many things. But being able to pivot out and get regenerator back is nice. Now that you've got heavy duty boots, it makes it an even better mon to pivot around with, to defog with, to knock things off. It gets heat wave for steel types. Really good mon, and regenerator's great. Landorus Therian is another. You're going to see those two everywhere in OU, and they're both really good draft league mons too. Landorus Therian just hits really hard with Earthquake, Stone Edge, U-turn, things like that. It gets Sword Stance and it gets Rock Polish, so it can double dance and set up and just hit you so hard. It's a great choice scarf user, and it has Intimidate, so it loves to pivot around with U-turn and intimidate things. And then you got Tornadus Therian, which its special attack's like 145 or something like that. So an electric move, Volt Switch, Focus Blast, Sludge Wave, like there's not many things that can switch in on just the things it can hit you with. Even a resisted Volt Switch hurts. It's fast enough. I think the fastest of the three is Tornadus Therian at like 121, but they're all fast. They're all good at pivoting around, so they're really a ton of fun to use. But you do get tired of seeing them everywhere. They cost you a lot of points to get, but they're going to be worth it because you're getting really good balance between Torn, Orlando, and then with Thunderous, you're just getting amazing offensive potential. So, and I know Thunderous gets Nasty Plot. I'm pretty sure Tornadus gets Nasty Plot now too. So, and then decent coverage. So, and you got mythicals and standalone Pokemon. I say standalone just because Latios and Latios are kind of the same Pokemon. They have different distributed stats. Latios is usually seen a little more offensive. Latios a little more defensive, but I didn't know where else to put these. But these are already great mons. They're fast, they hit hard, and they've got good special bulk. They both have Dragon Dance now, which means that they can become physical attackers and boost their speed, but they're usually special attackers. Choice Scarf and Choice Specs are great on both of them. I believe they both get Defog. Dragon and Psychic typing is pretty cool, and now they get Aura Sphere and I think Mystical Fire too to help hit steel types. So they're just really good mons. You could spend a long time talking about them, but basically a Calm Mind or Choice Set out of either of these is very scary. They might get banned in some leagues, but I think a lot will allow them because there's so many good things now. But they're just really good, really versatile mons. They are able to heal themselves with Recover. They can just do a lot. I think they both get Healing Wish, so really cool mons. Heatran, really good Stealth Rock setter. Fire and Steel is really cool. It does have a 4x weakness to ground, so sometimes you'll see this ran with a balloon. A lot of times you'll see it run with leftovers. It can hit hard with its signature move Magma Storm, which is like Fire Spin on steroids. It traps your opponent and however many turns hits, but it's like 100 base power with 75 accuracy, so hits hard and it hurts. Traps things. It likes to use Stealth Rocks. It gets Earth Power. It gets Flash Cannon. Pretty good mon. You'll see it in a lot of places, laddering, and it's a really good draft league mon too. I don't like it, but it is good. I just think it's weird looking and it unnerves me, and I don't know, just don't love it, but really good mon. A mon that they've always kind of reminded me of each other, I guess, just being fire types, but one's a mythical and one's not, if I'm remembering right. Anyway, Volcanion, fire and water, this has Flash Fire, so it has an immunity to fire types. You've got an immunity to water types here with Water Absorb, I believe is what it gets. Not Storm Drain, right? Pretty sure it's Water Absorb. Anyway, so you hit it with a water type move that would normally be neutral and it heals it. It gets fire type and water type moves, which just hit a ton. It gets its signature move Steam Eruption, which is basically just Scald. Not to use on steroids again, but Scald on steroids. It's like 110 base power instead of 80. Still has the 30% chance to burn. And it has less power points, so you can't click it as many times. But this also, I believe, gets things like Earth Power. It gets things like Sludge Bomb to hit other opponents. I think it might get Defog for some reason, so it can remove hazards. You can flame charge, make it faster, and then start hitting hard. It's a pretty good choice scarf or choice specs user, and I think it's got pretty good bulk and even a usable attack. So just really good all around, a lot of fun to use. There's a good chance that at least one person watching that this is their least favorite Pokemon. Cresselia is just so bulky, so hard to take down. It gets recovery with Moonlight. It gets Calm Mind. It loves to toxic things and keep clicking Calm Mind and Moonlight and just stay around forever. It's got such high defenses. It's just so hard to kill. So it's really annoying to play against. It has Levitate, so it's got an immunity. It can hit with, I think it's got Thunder Wave, so if it doesn't want to toxic, it can slow it down. Basically, if you don't toxic this thing, it's going to be really hard to take down. I think it gets some coverage moves, I think it gets Ice Beam to go with its Psychic. I think it gets Moonblast to hit Dark types, if I remember right. Could be wrong, but really bulky Mon. That's pretty much all there is to it. Once again, being a legendary, it's a higher tiered Mon. But yeah, you plug it in with your team, and it's going to be hard to kill, which is always a good thing. Victini is one of the most versatile Mons. So fun to use offensively. Can be used defensively because it's got the 100 base stats across the board, so you can even put some bulk into it and take some hits well. It can pivot around with U-turn. It can be physical or special. It gets fire. It gets all of its fire moves. V-Create's one of the best moves in the game, but it also gets electric moves for coverage. It gets its psychic stab moves for coverage. Just really great. I think it gets Shadow Ball and things like that too. So there's a lot of different ways you can run it. But one of the funnest things to do is just choice Scarf or choice Band and click V-Create a lot. You turn around, do some fun things, but you can run some more defensive sub-toxic sets with it. So it's really good. You look at its move pool and you'll be surprised at just how many great moves it gets that it can use. Makes it really worth the huge amount of points that you'll have to spend on it because it can be a nightmare to prep for. So once again, this is supposed to be the standalone Mons. This is one Mons Zygarde, but it's got its different forms. So on the right, you've got the normal Zygarde form. Do remember that if you run this, you cannot run in laddering or in probably just about any draft league you're in. You're not going to be able to run the ability Power Construct because it's broken. Because when it gets down to a certain HP, it gets a ton of HP back and becomes Zygarde 100%, which is just stupid strong. So you usually have to run the Aura Break set, but still a really good Mon. So bulky, gets Dragon Dance, gets Coil, so it gets multiple ways to set up that are really good. Like we saw with Garchomp, Dragon and Ground just hits a lot of things really powerfully. It does get things like Stone Edge too, I believe. And the best move it gets, one of the best moves in the game, 1,000 Arrows. So Zygarde for some reason gets 5 signature moves. And both of these forms get 1,000 Arrows, which is a ground type move that hits flying types and knocks them to the ground. It's such a good move. So you don't have to worry about clicking Dragon Dance having a flying type come in. You just click 1,000 Arrows. You're going to be running that over Earthquake usually, so really good move. Not quite as strong as Earthquake, but you can see why it has its merits. Hits Mons that levitate. Zygarde 10%, as a lot call it. Zydog, as I was about to just call it. Zydog 10% is not bulky at all like Zygarde. It's got much lower stats, but it is fast. It's 115 speed with 100 attack, I think. So it's a good Mon. Once again, it gets Coil and it gets Dragon Dance. So sometimes a Dragon Dance with 1,000 Arrows and Outrage is all you need to win a game late game. So it's usually more of a middle tiered Pokemon, whereas Zygarde's usually towards the top. But they're both using kind of in similar roles, just except that Zygarde has more HP and a little more versatility. Oh, and they both get extreme speed, which is really nice. Diancie, the Rock Fairy mythical Pokemon. Body Press is a very cool move for it because its signature move Diamond Storm has a 50% chance of raising its defense by 2 stages on top of doing 100 base power physical attack. So you could run Diamond Storm and Body Press, which is pretty cool. It gets Stealth Rocks. It hits pretty decently off of the special side too. I think it's got good defenses but a low HP. So it takes hits reasonably well, but it doesn't stay around as long as you'd like. But it does get ground moves to help hit steel types, which it's 4 times weak to. So I think it gets both screens, so you can set screens with it. Cool Mon, not great, but probably better this generation, especially because of body press at least. And it gets Meteor Beam now, which is a 2-turn move, but it does up its special attack, so it can do some shenanigans to do things like that. We're getting very close to the end here. We've got the Tapus, which are some of the best Pokemon that have ever been introduced. They're all so good. You got the main guy, Tapu Koko. So fun to use. One of my, possibly my unobjectively favorite Draft League Pokemon to ever use. It's just so fun. I think my favorite thing about it is it's one of the rare Mons that gets Volt Switch and U-Turn. So you have two ways to pivot. You've got the special electric type that does stab damage in electric terrain. Its ability brings electric terrain onto the field. So that hits really hard, but if you think a ground type might be coming in, you can also pivot, have U-turn on it and pivot that way. It's a better physical attacker, so things like Wild Charge and Brave Bird and U-turn hit really nicely, but it can special attack too with things like Dazzling Gleam and Thunderbolt. It kind of misses hidden power. The Tapus did not get the new terrain moves like we thought they would, and we thought Bulu and Tapu Koko were going to get close combat and play rough, which would have been insane. They did not get those. And Tapu Koko did not get Rising Voltage, but it's still super strong, still the best electric terrain setter, really fast, outspeeds almost everything other than a few things that'll be above it. Fast Taunter, which is always great. It's a fast defogger to get hazards off the field. It gets Nature's Madness, which is the fairy version of Super Fang, so it can cut HP in half. It was a really great Z-move user. Z-moves are obviously gone, but it's still a really good Mon. I think it gets Bulk Up, and I think it gets Calm Mind. Could be wrong on those, and I think it gets Work Up, so it can up its stats to attack better. But I think what I just love about it is it can be a great attacker, or it can just be the ultimate support Mon. Set electric terrain for Hawlucha or Alolan Raichu or something. Pivot out, defog. I don't think it gets Tailwind, but anyway, and it gets more moves than that. I could talk about it all day, and I don't need to. Tapu Lele was banned in most things in Gen 7. Gen 8 we'll just see. I know some leagues for sure are going to allow it, so it's worth talking about. Really good Mon. Psychic Terrain is great. I didn't talk about Electric Terrain. It keeps Pokemon from falling asleep, powers up electric moves. Psychic Terrain powers up psychic moves and stops priority from happening, which is really great, because if you got something that wants to come in and bullet punch you, it can't with Psychic Terrain up. Now there are ways like Defog and Steel Roller or other terrains to get rid of terrains, but Psychic Terrain keeps priority from happening. Tapu Lele is really good with Calm Mind. It's also a really good choice user, but Psychic and Moonblast hit a ton of things, and what they don't hit is Steel, which it gets Focus Blast. Luckily, this thing did not get Aura Sphere. It may have been a little bit too good, because you want to send in a Steel type, it can still throw a Focus Blast at you, which is so powerful, but at least has a 30% chance to miss. It didn't get Mystical Fire, so it didn't get Expanding Force, which is basically just a psychic move that's so powerful on Psychic Terrain. So they did their part to make sure that the Tapus didn't get too broken, even though it was going to be kind of fun to see them get those moves. So great designs, a lot of use. They get this also gets Taunt. I don't know if it gets Defog. I really don't. But yeah, just a lot of use out of those. Tapu Bulu, Grassy Terrain setter, Grassy Terrain. That looks like pencils on the top of his head. I never realized that. Sorry. Tapu Bulu. Sets Grassy Terrain, weakens a lot of ground attacks like Earthquake or Bulldoze, and powers up grass type moves. The move Grassy Glide gets priority on Grassy Terrain. Tapu Bulu did not get Grassy Glide, so we thought it was getting Grassy Glide priority. We thought it was getting Play Rough to finally use that huge physical fairy attack stat. And then we thought it was getting close combat to hit Steel types. Didn't get any of the three. Still a really good Pokemon. Doesn't get close combat, but it does get superpower to hit Steel types. So it can bulk up and start hitting you really hard with Wood Hammer, or Horn Leech gives it recovery. Things like Horn Leech, Leech Seed, and Grassy Terrain. Grassy Terrain also heals a little bit of health each turn. So if you run Leftovers with Grassy Terrain, with Leech Seed, with Horn Leech, you're just getting so much. You're getting so much HP back. It can actually be run specially with Calm Mind too, and then it does get like Giga Drain and Dazzling Gleam and stuff, which is kind of cool. But you'll almost always see it run physically. It's a good choice band or choice scarf user too. Tapu Fini is the worst Tapu. It's still good, but it's not as good as the other three, mostly because Misty Terrain's just not near as good as the other terrains. Even though it's Misty Terrain for Fairy, it does not boost Fairy type moves for some reason. No one knows why. Doesn't make sense. You feel like they should get it. And it weakens Dragon type moves, which not super helpful because it's Water and Fairy. It's immune to Dragon, so. But it does keep, when Misty Terrain is up, Pokemon that are affected by terrain cannot be statused in any way, which is good because Tapu Fini is very bulky. But it also kind of stinks because Tapu Fini is very bulky, which means with Scald, it likes to Scald burn things, and it likes to Toxic things to wear them down. Can't do that if your own terrain is up. But it is a good defogger, so it could defog away its own terrain and then Toxic something, I guess. So, but yeah, in my opinion, the least good of the Tapus, but still good. Still gets Calm Mind, still gets Water and Ice coverage, so it can still hit some things. I think it probably gets, not probably, it definitely gets Fairy coverage. I don't know if it gets any Fighting coverage or not, but might get Psychic coverage. But yeah, very cool looking design, very good battler. Moving on, we've got Ultra Beasts, we've got Aliens, right? There's a lot of these, so I'll try not to spend too much time, but all of the Ultra Beasts have at least one huge stat, and usually two really good stats, and they're like funky, weird stats, and like they're supposed to look weird and unsettle you like an alien would. Nihilego is Rock and Poison, which means it gets Stealth Rocks and Toxic Spikes. Huge special defense and really big special attack, and also very good speed. So all of these have the ability Beast Boost, which means their highest stat gets a boost every time they get a knockout. So Power Gem, Sludge Wave, Thunderbolt, Grass Knot all hit really hard on this. Run it with a Balloon, run it with an Assault Vest, run it Scarf or Specs, run it with not Leftovers, but Black Sludge to give it that. So it gets a lot of use. But Beast Boost is really cool with this because it's easy to make its special attack high enough that you get a lot of boosts out of that, especially with like Assault Vest is really fun. But you can also boost, I know you can find a way to boost its special defense too, because that's its highest stat. Buzzwole is Bug and Fighting. I don't know if it gets close combat now. I really think last generation it didn't, and it was rumored that it was going to get it. I forgot to check. But if not, it does get fighting moves like Drain Punch. It does get fighting moves like Superpower. Huge physical attack and huge defense. So it takes hits really well. It can bulk up. It likes to run like Drain Punch and Leech Life to get health back. I think it gets U-turn. I need to find out if it gets U-turn. But I think it can learn things like Earthquake and Poison Jab too. So biggest thing is it's a really good like Choice Scarf or Choice Band user, or a really good bulk up user. Just hits hard really physically, like you'd expect. Look at that physique. I mean, if mosquitoes weren't scary enough already, now you got this. Circuitry, pure electric type, sky high special attack, decent speed. I don't really remember any of its other stats that well. I think it's probably got a decent special defense. I think it could be a cool Assault Vest user. Really good Scarfer, really good Choice Specs user. It gets Tail Glow, which raises its special attack by 3 stages. So if you can do that and get its speed boosted with Tail Glow, or like run it with Sticky Webs or something, it's pretty filthy. An electric type move is just going to bop you. If you're a ground type, you got to be careful because it gets Energy Ball. It used to get Signal Beam. That move's not around anymore. I think it might get like, does it get Psychic maybe? I think it gets Dazzling Gleam, but usually, like, really all you need is electric moves and a ground move here and there. So really scary. Great Scarfer. Celesteela, in my opinion, is probably the best Ultra Beast that's not banned. Now, Pheromosa and Naganadel are both banned usually, so you don't really get to see them used much. But Steel and Flying is a great type. We know this because Skarmory is great and Corviknight is awesome. And Celesteela is absolutely amazing. Luckily for us, it doesn't get Stealth Rocks because then it would be too good. But it gets Leech Seed to help out with keeping itself alive on top. Leech Seed and Leftovers on it are really good. It's so bulky. It's really good to run Weakness Policy with. Celesteela has the most balanced stats of all of them. I think it's got low speed and low HP, but you can boost its speed with Autotomize, and then like take a super effective hit that it's usually really hard to OHKO, and then you can start hitting with weakness policy. It's a good physical or special attacker, and the thing that's really scared is its beast boost. A lot of these Mons, it's hard for them to beast boost their like specific stats because they're so low, but it just has all high stats, so it can boost up its attack, special attack, defense, or special defense, and it's really hard to figure out if it's going to be a defensive or offensive set. I don't think it gets defog, but it gets a lot of good attacking moves. It gets air slash, it gets flash cannon, it gets heavy slam, it gets earthquake, so I think it might get flamethrower, and you can run it as a really good mixed attacker, or just make it defensive and really hard to kill with like toxic leech seeds, stuff like that. So I think it might get grassy glide now too. So put that on a grassy terrain team. Would it be affected by grassy glide because it doesn't touch the ground? I don't know. Either way, I'm realizing I did not put. I forgot one of my favorites, man. I didn't put. We'll get to Guzzlord in a second. I didn't put Kartana on here. Okay, Kartana is a little paper mache ninja thingy. That's the best way to describe it. You can Google what it looks like. But it's grass and steel. Its attack is like 181, and it's got good speed. Great Scarfer, great choice band. It gets Swords Dance. It gets steel and grass coverage. It stabs, but it also gets like Sacred Sword. It also gets knockoff. It also gets Psycho Cut. That thing is a sweep waiting to happen. As a choice Scarfer, or if you can get a Swords Dance up, especially with some webs, and just go crazy with it. So also one of the best and just so fun to use. Guzzlord has a massive HP stat, but its defense stats aren't that good. It's Dark and Dragon, so it is ×4 weak to Fairy. Guzzlord is probably the worst, like, Ultra Beast, not counting Poipole, which is a bummer, because look how cool it looks. But Dark and Dragon's cool together. It's cool in Trick Room, because it is slow, and it does have a good enough HP, it can usually live a hit or two. It gets Draco Meteor, it gets Dark Pulse, you can run it physical with Crunch. I think it gets some fighting moves. I don't know if it gets any fire moves. I've not used Guzzlord a whole lot, but it's usable still. It's usually going to be the lowest point cost for an Ultra Beast, so you can kind of use it as a value mon. It still gets Beast Boost, and HP is never boosted by Beast Boost, so it can be a good physical or special attacker. If you're going to have it on your team, I just noticed it's Club Tail, that's cool. If you're going to have it on your team, you're probably going to want to have Trick Room options with it to really help it out. Then Poipole. Poipole's not really that usable. But Beast Boost is just such a good ability. Beast Boost, I think, is possibly the best ability in the game. I mean, if you run Scarf or Specs Poipole, there's a chance you could make it work. I just included it because it has Beast Boost. Its stats are really low. They're in the 70s and 60s. If you want to spend a really low amount of points on it, you might be able to have fun 1 week and run a set that would work, and it might be able to pick up a kill or two, and you'd be happy. And it's cute, so that's cool to have on your team too, but it's not very good. Then you got two more. You got Stack Attacka and Blacephalon. Stack Attacka is Rock and Steel, which I said earlier is a really bad defensive typing, and it is. But Stack Attacka is so stinking bulky that it can still take its ×4 weak hits to ground and fighting a lot of times, so it's really hard to kill. It can set up its own Trick Room. It's really slow. I think it gets Body Press now, which if so, Iron Defense and Body Press from this thing is terrifying. But it's so slow that Gyro Ball is a really strong Steel type move that it gets. It gets Stone Edge. I think it gets Stealth Rocks, surely? It'd be crazy if it didn't. Surely it gets like Earthquake and stuff. This is one that I've not used much before, but its potential is pretty terrifying. And then Blacephalon is like a really good Chandelure. Like, Chandelure is already great. As a choice Scarf, choice Specs, or Calm Mind user, Blacephalon can do all that. Super high special attack. Fire and Ghost hits almost everything. I think it gets like Psychic, and I'm really not sure how much coverage it gets, just because a Fire Blast and a Shadow Ball from this usually does the trick. Really good choice Scarf user. Terrifying. And if you really want to go big, it gets Mind Blown, which is like 150 base power. You lose half your HP though, so you can only do it twice. But it's going to hit so hard, it literally just throws its head like a bomb. which is kind of cool. So last of the Ultra Beasts. Now we just got a few more new Pokemon. I know this has been super long, but hopefully you've enjoyed watching. Hopefully you've learned something from this. If nothing else, hopefully you've looked at a new Mon or two and been like, oh, I could use that on my Draft League team, or I could try using this laddering in a way I've never used it before. Look at Pokemon Showdown, look at Cerebi, look at Bulbapedia, look at sites like that, and you can learn more about it. And then, YouTube, people who have used these before and find some cool sets. Everything can be used on here to some extent. You got Galarian, Slowking. I like Slowking. Very cool Mon. This thing is super creepy looking, but I love it. It is Psychic and Poison, like Galarian Slowbro. It's more defensive. It gets Regenerator. In fact, I think it has... Am I wrong? I think it pretty much just has Slowking stats, except it's a new type. Still gets Regenerator, so that's nice. There's not a whole lot more to say about it. You can kind of look at what you can do with Slowking. Trick Room, Teleport, decent coverage. Biggest thing about it is it's Regenerator, and it's pretty thick. Same thing with this, though. It's not quite as... Well, Poison's still a good defensive type, but Water is a really good defensive type. Looks like Hitmonlee's eyes on top there. Anyway, I haven't used this yet. I haven't used it on Showdown, and I've not gotten it in my copy of Crown Tundra yet. I didn't have enough of the twigs to make the thing I needed. Whatever. Don't have it yet, but I think it looks cool, and I think there's a lot of use out of it. It gets good coverage options. There's something I wanted to say. Oh, its main ability is only usable in doubles, so that's just not helpful for singles, which is what I really focus on. So if you have it, you'll be using it for Regenerator, which is a great ability, so that's all you really need. And it does have a special move. I think it does poison damage, but also works a little bit like Spite, and that it also lowers the power points of the last move used by the other Pokemon. Last three, Calyrex. I have not looked into much yet, and I hate myself for it because I meant to before I did the video, but it's Grass Psychic. It's got 100 HP, which means it's got decent bulk, and then the rest of its stats are 80 across the board. Calyrex is not very good. Calyrex was made to be fused with these two Pokemon, and then it becomes so broken because it has Unnerve plus their ability, which I'll get to when it's in those forms, and its stats are insane. So the Rider forms of Calyrex, I'm guessing, are surely going to be banned because they're so good. But Calyrex on his own, he's not a very strong guy, and that's okay. He was fun in the story. Grass Psychic has a 4x weakness to U-turn, and since it's not super fast, it could be a little bit tough to use, but I'm guessing it does get things probably like Leech Seed and Giga Drain. It probably gets something like Synthesis or Recover, so I'm guessing it's got some longevity. Like I said, I haven't used it yet, and I haven't looked into its move pool a whole lot yet. But a lot of times, something about Psychic types too is they usually get pretty decent coverage options. So hopefully it does get some good coverage options. I don't see myself using this in Draft League ever. Maybe if it keeps dropping to lower tiers, you could find it as like kind of a helpful cleric type mod. Maybe it gets something like Aromatherapy to cure status conditions. Maybe it gets Wish or Healing Wish to help be a little more cleric-y. I don't know. Probably gets something like Calm Mind to boost its special attack, special defense. I'll look after this and maybe I'll post in the comments. I don't know. So, Spectrier, pure ghost type. I think it's like 135 speed and 145 special attack. And that's really just all you need to know. It clicks Shadow Ball a lot. You can choice Scarf it. You can choice Specs it. Shadow Ball is going to hit really hard. Every time it gets a knockout, it's basically a special form of Moxie. Its special attack goes up by one stage. There's not many things that switch into the Ghost type. Ghost type hits everything except Dark resists it and Normal is immune. So if you got a bulky Dark or Normal type, you can kind of wall it. But otherwise, this is a really cool mon to grab because, like, if you're kind of new, it doesn't take... This sounds mean, but it doesn't take a whole lot of skill to use. Like, it takes skill to keep it alive, to bring it in at the right time. But, like, to know what move to click, you just come in and click Shadow Ball. It does get Dark Pulse, so that can hit normal types. I think it gets Nasty Plot. And it gets some normal moves, I guess, to hit Dark types, but not really, because I think its normal moves are probably like Swift and Hyper Beam. So, you just want to have a good switch in for Dark and normal types if you're going to build around this, is basically what I'm saying. But just clicking Shadow Ball all day is pretty fun. So it's pretty easy to use, and I think it is going to cost you a lot of points. It's not super bulky, but you can have fun using it, and I think do pretty well with it. And then Glastrier is how I think it's probably said, is kind of the opposite. It's physical and it's slow, so it's more bulky instead of fast. It's actually got great stats all around other than speed, so it's still ranked very high in points, even though pure ice usually isn't that good. If you're going to get this, I recommend trying to get Trick Room with it because it is slow, but this thing hits so hard, and it gets better coverage. So you actually get some decent coverage with Glastrier or with Spectrier, but a lot of its moves are physical, and its physical attack is bad, so you won't use it. A lot of Glastrier's coverage is physical, so you are getting like ground moves, and I think maybe like, does it get Psycho Cut? I'm not sure, but like ice and ground are hit almost everything, like we see with Mamoswine, and I think it gets a good dark physical coverage move if I'm remembering right, and then it gets its own version of Moxie. So it's every time you get a knockout, its attack goes up. So if you can figure a way to run this in Trick Room, or just run this as like a Choice Band or Revenge Killer, or like Assault Vest, or just pretty bulky, like you could have a pretty good time with this as well. So I believe that's everything on the list. This is a super long video. If you want to skip around at times, I completely understand. But basically, this is just for giving people ideas on how can I use some more things. One of the most fun things about Draft League and laddering is using new Pokemon. I really encourage you to do so. Don't use the same 6-7 Mons over and over. And I get attached. I do the same thing. I can't tell you how many times I've drafted Nidoking and Tapu Koko and Mons like that I just love using. But the more you end up using, you fall in love with them. Like, I'd never used Mamoswine until the last season of TPA I was in, and now it's one of my top 10 favorite Pokemon of all time because it was so fun to play the game with. So I encourage you guys to do that. Hopefully, if you're newer to Pokemon, or if you're new to competitive and you haven't seen how a lot of these Mons that are back in the game now have been used, hopefully this helps out a little bit. If not, hopefully you had fun making fun of me while you watched the video. So if you enjoyed this, please like, comment, subscribe, share this video around. See if we can help each other out and just have a good time with upcoming Pokemon. So anyway, I'm going to get on out of here. It's been a long video. Thank you for watching. Peace.